Let's welcome in our man Brenden Nunes, who pretty much does everything as it pertains to the Sacramento Kings. He's writer at the Kings Herald, Sacramento Bee, hosts the Kings Pulse podcast, and most recently has formed the new version of the Mega Powers with James Beat on the Kings Beat podcast. Brenden, do you know what the Mega Powers are?
I do not.
Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't think so. It's a kid that we dubbed the Heartbreak Kid, and he wasn't sure what that meant either. But I'm pleased that
the Heartbreak Kid is.
No, I know who it is. I talked to my dad and got educated.
He knows who. What he's saying is he knows who it is now.
No. I knew. I had an idea. I wasn't sure that I was right, but I confirmed.
When you went to your dad and like, hey, these guys keep calling me the Heartbreak Kid, he was like, what? They call you Shawn Michaels? He knew it immediately.
Yeah, he knew right away. He was pretty ashamed that I wasn't confident in who that was. Yeah.
We mentioned we posted a poll question over here on YouTube about kind of the optimism level headed into the second half of the season. We asked like, are you optimistic headed into the second part of the season, or are you more like same old Kings? Got a pretty good response that said, I think it was 74% said they're optimistic headed into the season, second part of the season. How do you feel? I feel like we'd all be on a vibe if they had beaten Chicago and ended, with the new guys at 3-1. Fact is, they didn't 2-2, but I still feel like there's some good energy around this team.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy at least to be excited, right? Like, I don't know. Optimistic is like, I'm not optimistic that they're going to make the 10 seed, to be honest. But I'm optimistic that like you're going to make an additional move in the offseason and I can just focus on what are we building with Fox and Sabonis pairing, and how does DiVincenzo finish out the year, and Davion Mitchell, can he keep up the kind of offensive emergence we've seen from him. So I'm optimistic for the future, like going into next season. For the rest of this year, they got an uphill battle to make this 10 spot, really.
They do. I'm maybe delusional. Maybe that's the word when it comes to this. But I've seen enough from them in these 4 games together where I wouldn't be surprised if they turned in, a good run of basketball here in these final 22 games. Like I wouldn't be surprised. I think some people would be like, oh, I didn't see this coming at all. I could see them playing some pretty good ball and being around 500. I know when they had 25 games left, I said they could finish 14-11. I don't think that's crazy. Unlikely, maybe. Crazy? Nah, I can see it. I've seen them play good basketball in these four games.
Yeah, they play good teams, right? Like Minnesota, I think, is better than people realize. They kind of had a little bit of a come up that I think a lot of people were hoping Sacramento were going to have this season. And they played them twice and played them well. And then that Brooklyn game was the real stinker, right? Like, yeah, that one was a rough one. But you also shot the worst field goal percentage you had all year. There are like 18 turnovers in that one, and it looked like a little bit of a chemistry. You could see that these guys were new. And it was just a new group all playing alongside each other, a lot of drop passes and things like that. And then when you're talking about Chicago, I mean, I know they had a lot of injuries, but that's still the number 1 seed in the East. Like DeMar DeRozan played that's the first time I actually got to watch a full DeMar DeRozan game. And my God, that guy is balling. It does not matter what you're doing to him. So yeah, I mean, I think they played really high-level opponents in those 4 games, and aside from the Brooklyn one, and I think they played them well. And I know you guys talked about this a little bit, I think, yesterday too, but like seeing the heart from the team is just different, right? Like fighting until the final buzzer against Chicago, and if you're going to do that every single game, you have a whole lot more chances. And I think the difference for me is that like this was a bad team, but their talent level was a lot better than what we had actually seen. Mm-hmm. And I think if you can go from underperforming based on where your talent level is, and then you add a player like Sabonis that is supposed to, I think the idea is enable some of these guys that have more talent but haven't been able to really show it or use it. So I think there is kind of a bigger margin for improvement than some people realize because they were already underperforming for the talent level that was on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
I'd argue they even fought against Brooklyn. They just It's like they were throwing punches. The punches just weren't landing.
Yeah.
Like they didn't get to the chair and go, no mas. Like they fought. It's just they couldn't connect on any punches. So I think that's, there really is not much positive to take away from that Brooklyn game. But if you forced me to, that would be the one that I took, because they continued to play. They didn't dumb down into like hero ball or iso ball. Like, I know Will Z had the stats. The ball kept moving. They never stopped passing the ball. They just couldn't make a shot worth a damn. Like you mentioned, the 18 turnovers thing. You probably remember this better than I do. 18 to 12 turnovers to assist. It's 18 to 12. Like that's just insanely awful.
Yeah, and the ball is moving a lot better. Like you said, Will had that stat of potential assists, and I think that you could see it in those other games. There's been a good level of assists for them as well. I think an interesting aspect, though, like, and also those rotations were, I don't know what was going on with the rotations in Brooklyn. Yeah, it's a really weird one. I think it's interesting, though, to see how are they going to manage when Sabonis goes out and Rashawn Holmes is the big in there in his place, because Rashawn's looked bad, and he only played 10 minutes in Chicago. His mom tweeted that he's got some off-court personal stuff going on, and I would assume that it's just tough mentally, right? Like, even for a guy like Rashawn that is always like heart, soul, 100% effort, to go from having to fight for every single minute earlier in his career, and then all of a sudden had solidified himself as a starting center in the league and thought he was going to get a bigger payday than he did. And now all of a sudden you're right back to this backup role where you got to shine and like prove yourself almost. Like, that's got to be a mental roller coaster. And I wonder if this break will give him a chance to kind of accept the reality of what his situation is and maybe kind of start to shine in his new role. But it's going to be interesting to see how he responds.
Brenden, if you were Alvin Gentry, what would you do with Rashawn Holmes? I know me personally, I know it's a tough situation. You've seen what he can be, and you want him to reach that as well. But I feel like, this team's goal is still to try to make the play in and get into that 10th spot. I feel like I'd have to have a short leash with Rashawn Holmes. And I'd give him a chance coming out of the All-Star break. But if it's not there in the first game or two, I may have to look at Damian Jones in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Damian Jones, even outside of like Rashawn not playing great, Damian Jones was playing really good basketball before they got Sabonis. And I think that it's got to suck for him to just get out of the rotation because of the acquisition, because he played well and deserves more opportunity. So I think that you do have to look towards Damian Jones sometimes. I mean, he's a guy that showed that you can play him for 15 minutes and he's going to have an impact in those minutes. And right now, like, I don't know if Rashawn Holmes is that guy. I think that the conversation that needs to take place with Holmes, if it hasn't already, and I don't know if this is coaching staff or front office, it's probably front office. It's like, dude, you're a starting caliber center in the league. We know that. Like, I personally think you're a top 15, top 20 center in the league, which sounds crazy, but after like 8, you really fall off. It's just that we went and got a top 5, top 8 center. So it's no hard feelings. It's just Sabonis is really damn good. It's not that you're not. And if you can show the rest of this season that you're still that guy, and when you're out there, I need you to be Rashawn Holmes. I don't need you to go out there and try to do what Domantas Sabonis is doing. Because right now he's throwing some passes that are probably outside of his wheelhouse. It's got to hurt that one of his struggles has always been rebounding, and then the guy he's coming in for now replacing is a top 5 rebounder in the league. So that just makes that look even worse. But don't worry about what Sabonis is doing while you're out there. I need you to go out there and be the best version of Rashawn Holmes. And if you can finish this season strong, we're going to find you a new home in this offseason. But the better that you play, not only are you going to get some playoff experience if you can help us get to that point, but you're going to up your value and make more teams around the league want you this coming offseason, and we're going to try to move you. I would assume that they're going to try to move him. I thought they probably did. Probably tried to at the deadline.
Yeah.
Brenden Nunes of the Kings Herald with us here on D'Lo and KC on ESPN 1320. Is there also something to be said that Rashawn Holmes and Damian Jones are really different in the way that they play the game, and Damon is a completely different type of player, not only than Rashawn Holmes, but then Domantas Sabonis as well. And we certainly don't know because he's racking up the DMPs like Tyrese Halliburton used to do. But is there something to be said for, you're throwing Damian Jones in there, you're really mixing it up. Rashawn has some similarities. You mentioned the rebounding, some similarities to Domantas Sabonis. Unfortunately, particularly on the defensive end, they have a lot of similarities there. Damian Jones, a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical. Is there something to be said for maybe just a completely different type of look?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like you're still not a very good defensive team, right? Like I think that they're better. They're definitely better at containing on the perimeter, which is something we heard them talk about so many times this year as being a weakness. And Buddy and Tyrese weren't great at that, and those two guys are now replaced with more minutes from Davion Mitchell and Dante DiVincenzo. But you still don't have, and Justin Holiday, but you still don't have any sort of rim protection, and that's where Damian Jones comes in. That, like, to me, that's the main thing that he brings different. He's a lob threat on offense, which I guess Rashawn Holmes falls into that as well. But the rim protection that you're getting from Damian Jones is what is really different to me. And I think in those second units, you need even more high-paced offense because that still seems to be the identity that they're looking towards. I kind of think that's part of the reason that they really wanted Sabonis, is that if he is a small ball center that's able to bring these boards down and initiate the break himself, like I think he plays perfectly into a high-paced offense. Mm-hmm. And when you have less playmaking out there, you just simplify the game the more often you're able to get in transition. And I think just getting stops, Damian Jones fills into that style of play. And if he's able to protect the rim and bring a board down, and he moves really well for his size as well, I think it's some of the things that Rashawn Holmes can do, but the real difference for me is the rim protection that you're getting. And I do think there is weirdly like still an aspect of Damian Jones trying to prove himself. And I think Rashawn Holmes, I mean, I don't want to speak for his mental, but it looks like in the play that we've seen that like he already has proven himself and he feels that way. Mm-hmm. So I think that maybe if he can get a little bit of that back right now, I do think that you have to at least give Damian Jones opportunities, though.
Brenden, how are you dealing with Tyrese Halliburton and him being with the Pacers? Are you looking at every, one-hand runner or sidestep three and like, oh my gosh, Tyrese, I miss him? Or are you just like, that's nice, I like Tyrese, he's a good ball player, I'm glad we got Sabonis?
Can it be both? Like, I think like
yes. The answer, by the way, yes, it absolutely can be both.
Yeah, like I think I definitely watched the Pacers highlights from a recent game with a friend of mine the other day, and I had a little moment of what Kenny just acted out there of like he did one of those sidestep threes right after this sweet no look, and I'm like, man, I really thought I was gonna watch this for a decade. And I think there's just something about his style that's so freaking fun. But I'm also not sitting here thinking that they made some crazy mistake. I think they could. I think we could look back and say that this was a mistake, but I think it's still too early to know that. Yeah, where are you guys at with Tyrese?
Well, the one thing, and Damian talked about it earlier, and I agree with it 100%, is Tyrese is balling 20 and 11. He's killing right now. De'Aaron Fox is killing 28 and 5 since the trade or whatever. The thing that nobody wants to acknowledge is neither one of them will be doing anything close to that if they were together. And that's the problem. I don't believe. Like, I don't think if they're in the same backcourt, Tyrese is 20 and 11. He's around 13 and 7, which is what he was. De'Aaron, he's not doing 28. He may get up to 20, but for whatever reason, those two did not complement each other. It didn't work. And you can argue about who should have gone or whatever the case may be, but it gets clearer and clearer that you had to split those two up. And you got a guy in Sabonis that complements both of them. So it worked out that way, it feels like.
Yeah, I kind of tend to think that they could have worked together. I think that those guys do complement each other offensively. And they needed just more than we saw, like 80 games or so between the two, which I know isn't nothing, but I also don't think that's a crazy amount. But I mean, it is undeniable, like what you said, like they play better separate of each other. And at the same time, while I'm watching Tyrese and being like, I really wish that I got to watch this forever. It's so good to have that De'Aaron Fox back, because that level of De'Aaron Fox brings that same excitement out of me that you saw from these crazy Tyrese Halliburton plays. Because if he's getting back to actually growing from what we saw with his 25-7 last season, then De'Aaron Fox is a crazy player in his own right, and he does look a whole lot more comfortable out there. I would imagine that it's just got to feel good to look around and be like, man, they actually tried to put something around me right now. Because before this, the biggest move that they tried to make to try to complement him and surround him with good players that are going to help him win basketball games right now was Harrison Barnes. And you just gave up Justin Jackson for that. Like, this is the first time I think De'Aaron Fox can look around and be like, all right, they're trying now. So it's time to kick this thing into gear, and we're trying to win some games right now. And you see that.
It seems like two things there. First, it seems like a good time to repeat our public service announcement from earlier today. Davion Mitchell is out of the Rising Stars Challenge, which means the Sacramento Kings have no representation tonight nor this weekend at the All-Star game. Tyrese Halliburton will still very much be in the Rising Stars Challenge, and he appears to be a favorite of the National Basketball Association. Maybe just avoid tonight's game. Maybe watch something else. Catch up on a movie. Catch up on a series. Watch reruns of The Oculus. Play a video game. Go outside with the dog. Do something. Maybe just don't watch the Rising Stars Challenge, because there's a good chance Tyrese Halliburton is going to get a lot of attention and a lot of love. And the fact that Davion Mitchell isn't there to counter any of that could send Kings fans into a tough spiral here headed into the weekend.
Yeah, I got a comedy show with my girl to keep me busy.
There you go. There you go. Who are you going to see?
You know, honestly, I don't know the name off the top of my head.
Oh, okay, that's all right. That's all right.
Which is a tough one.
If the girl wants to go to the comedy show, you go to the comedy show.
I like it. It's a fun time.
Hey, baby, we're going to the comedy show. Damn right we are.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
I'm not watching anything tonight. Yep.
That's the way to respond.
I got basketball to watch. I can't go nowhere.
Jazz has just learned to deal with that. Like
First Grant, let's go. I want to see what's going on. Luckily, we're lucky I'm not there courtside. I would try to be there courtside. I'm gonna just watch it on the computer, but I mean, I should be at that one.
I still might have time to watch the Ron Adive in the celebrity game, though. That's what I'm really here for. You said Kings don't have representation. I think you're missing one here.
Yeah, you're right. That's me. Kenny and I were discussing this earlier. Curious to get your thoughts on it. De'Aaron's turnaround. You just talked a little bit about that. A lot of things happened all at once. The trade with Tyrese Halliburton, which also included Buddy Hield. And obviously Marvin went later. I feel like Marvin was inconsequential to this situation, but we've long it has been pitted as De'Aaron versus Tyrese, but we've also long speculated that he was sick of Buddy Hield. What do you think had a greater impact on this turnaround with De'Aaron Fox over the course of the last 5 games? Because he started playing really well when he came back from the ankle injury, and the return of his smile and kind of joyful demeanor.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when Buddy left, I think the first game without Buddy, De'Aaron got up there and he's like, yeah, man, I think this is only like the 3rd game I've ever played in my career without Buddy Hield. I'm like, man, I feel for you right there. That is a tough one. Marvin Bagley was...
You're like, this is the 3rd game I've played without Buddy Hield. And y'all wondering why I haven't been smiling all season.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, Buddy and Marvin are gone. We know Tyrese is not falling into this, but you hear talking about, but this team is just full of high IQ players. I'm like, what? What? Like, where is this coming from? And I'm like, oh, well, you got rid of the 2, so I see where you're at. I think a lot of it is moving on from those dudes. I mean, again, like, De'Aaron is playing really, really good basketball last year, and he comes into this year probably wanting to grow, I would assume, from where he finished last season. And in the offseason, there's 2 guys that don't want to be here. And they're not very good at basketball in the first place. It's different if you don't want to be here and you're contributing. Like, no, I mean, Marvin was doing all right this year, I guess. Buddy sucked. Buddy was bad this year. And he would stop the ball movement. Like, but if Buddy was on this team and Sabonis was still around, you wouldn't be seeing this ball movement. Right. I think there's an aspect of trust that if I give it up, at some point it's going to come back to me. When before, if I give it up, that guy might pass to Buddy. And then what? Like,
and then
so
you better crash the boards.
Yeah, right. So I think there is a big aspect of like, it's relieving to not have to play with somebody that doesn't want to be there and is a frustrating style to play next to.
Yeah, I agree.
Brenden, you're killing it, man. You got any more? But you going to start a new podcast just so you want to do some more Kings coverage here. You got the B, you got the Herald, you got the Pulse, the Beat.
He's everywhere. Never there.
I got to start covering WWE. Apparently, get on this.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Boxing. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, you're a big boxing guy. I think just following Kenny is enough to keep up.
That's all I do.
Yeah,
and it's more than enough for my boxing info. Are you a football guy?
I am. I'm a Niner guy.
Oh, you're a Niner guy. Okay.
Yeah. You agree we should
have
Super Bowls, right? 10.
What was that?
You agree we should have 10 Super Bowls
at least
history? Just saying.
At least.
I don't think we just talking. No, it's real. We really should have that.
Yeah. We've seen those Trey Lance practice clips, by the way. Oh yeah, I'm ready for this.
I have no one to blame but myself for bringing it up. That's just, I think we need to need to increase Brenden Nunes' role here at ESPN 1320. We're gonna work on some things. Brenden truthfully doesn't have enough jobs, so we're gonna try to tack one more on top of what he's doing. Man, great work as always, man. You know we're your number one fans. Thanks for hanging out with us.
I appreciate it, fellas. Yeah.